All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of the most popular programming languages on the planet, Python. If you've ever been curious about coding but had no idea where to even begin, you are in the right place. We're going to start from square one with your very first program.
So let's start with a really simple question. Have you ever wished you could just tell your computer exactly what you want it to do? To automate some boring task, or to solve a specific problem step by step? Well, that's pretty much what programming is all about.
And Python is hands down one of the best languages for having that conversation with your computer. It's built to be clear and easy to understand. So, you know what? Let's not waste any more time talking about it. Let's actually do it. We're going to write our first line of code right now. This right here, this really gets to the heart of Python. The whole philosophy behind it was to create a language that wasn't some cryptic puzzle. The syntax is so clean that it almost reads like a simple English sentence. And that right there is a huge reason why so many people start their coding journey with Python.
So why did Python get so popular? Well, first, like we just said, it's incredibly beginner-friendly, but don't let that fool you. It is also ridiculously versatile. I mean, it's used for everything from web development at places like Instagram to complex data science. And yeah, it is absolutely powerful enough for the pros at Google, Netflix, and pretty much every other major tech company you can think of.
Okay, before we actually type anything, there is one critical thing you have to understand. Computers are literal, like extremely literal. They don't guess what you meant to say. A single missing comma or a forgotten quotation mark will cause what's called a syntax error. But here's the secret. Don't fear the error messages. They're not failures. They're actually helpful little guides that the computer gives you, pointing right to the spot you need to fix.
And here we go. This is it. The most famous line of code in history. Hello world. It's a tradition. Now, this one simple line shows you a lot. That word print is a command, or more accurately, a function. The parentheses hold the thing you want the function to work with, and those quotes tell Python that hello world is a piece of text, what we call a string.
You run that one line, and this is what appears on your screen. That's it. Simple, clean, and honestly, pretty satisfying. You've just given the computer a precise instruction, and it followed it perfectly. That's the core of programming right there.
So let's zoom in on that word I used, function. The easiest way to think about a function is like it's a verb. It's an action word. Python has a ton of these built right in to do common tasks for you. The job of the print function is just to take whatever you put inside those parentheses and display it on the screen. Simple as that. Okay, but what if you want your program to remember some piece of information to use later? That's where variables come in. Just think of a variable as a labeled box or a container. You give the box a name and you stick some information inside it. Now, that equals sign isn't what you remember from math class. In programming, it's called the assignment operator. It just means, hey, computer, take the thing on the right and store it in the box on the left.
Now, those containers can hold all different kinds of stuff. The three you'll run into most at the beginning are strings, which is just programmer speak for text, integers, which are just whole numbers, and floats, which are numbers that have a decimal point. Understanding what type of data you're dealing with is absolutely fundamental.
And that brings us to a super common hurdle for beginners. There's another handy function called input that lets you ask the user to type something in. But here's the catch. Input always gives you back a string of text. Even if the user types in the number 5, your program sees it as the character 5. So if you want to do any math with it, you first have to tell Python to convert it into a number using int or float.
Okay, now we get to the really cool stuff. This is how we make our programs smart. How does a program make a decision? It uses conditional logic. Using the keywords if, elif, which is just a short way of saying else if, and else, you can create different paths for your code to take. Your program can ask a question, and depending on whether the answer is true or false, it will run a totally different chunk of code.
Now check this out. This shows the difference between code that just works and code that's actually designed well. If you use a bunch of separate if statements, the computer is forced to check every single one every single time. But if you use an if-elif structure, you're telling the computer, hey, as soon as you find an answer that's true, you can stop looking. It's way more efficient, and it's a great example of learning how to think like a programmer.
So what if you need to do something not just once, but 10 times? Or maybe 1,000 times? You're definitely not going to copy and paste your code over and over again. That would be a nightmare. And that is exactly what loops are for. A loop is just a way to tell the computer to repeat a block of code automatically.
let's look at a really simple one. This line, for I in range of 3, is basically saying, hey computer, for 3 cycles, I want you to run the indented code below. That range of 3 part just generates a sequence of 3 numbers, and the loop runs once for each of them.
And that's the result. The print command inside that loop got executed exactly 3 times. We just automated that task without having to write print 3 separate times. Now imagine doing that for thousands of emails or files. That's the power of loops.
So far, we've only used the tools that come built in with Python. But what if you need to do something more complex, like picking a random number or doing some advanced trigonometry? That's where libraries come into play. A library is just a collection of pre-written code that other smart people have already made. By importing a library, you basically give your program instant new abilities. It's like finding a spellbook full of new powers. And the collection of Python libraries out there it's just massive. I mean, there is a library for pretty much anything you can dream of. You've got random for picking random numbers, math for complex calculations, requests for grabbing data from the internet, Pygame for building your own video games, and Pandas for becoming a data analysis wizard. The possibilities are, for real, almost endless.
And just like that, you've seen the absolute core concepts of programming with Python. From displaying text and storing information, to making decisions, automating tasks, and even borrowing superpowers from libraries. You have the fundamental building blocks. So the only real question left is, what problem are you going to solve with them?